para poder dar inicio con nuestro panel de gobernadores de Norteamérica en la segunda cumbre de cambio climático de las Américas.
Para poder dar inicio, saludaremos a quienes nos acompañan en nuestro panel. Saludamos a Peter Shumlin, gobernador de Vermont.
Damos la bienvenida a la Premier de Ontario, Kathleen Wayne.
Agradecemos la presencia de Patricia Espinosa, secretaria ejecutiva de la Convención Marco de las Naciones Unidas sobre el Cambio Climático.
Y el gobernador del estado de Jalisco, Aristóteles Sandoval.
Para poder dar inicio, dejaremos en el uso de la voz a la secretaria ejecutiva de la Convención Marco de las Naciones Unidas sobre el Cambio Climático, Patricia Espinosa.
Muy buenos días a todas y a todos. Good morning, everybody. Me da muchísimo gusto poder participar en este panel y poder ser quien tiene el privilegio de moderar un panel con tres extraordinarios líderes en materia de medio ambiente y de lucha contra el cambio climático, los gobernadores de Jalisco, Aristóteles Sandoval, el gobernador de Vermont, Peter Shumlin, y la primera ministra de Ontario, Kathleen Wayne. Muy bienvenidos a este distinguidísimo grupo de líderes que están demostrando día a día con sus acciones que es posible realizar una contribución decisiva y duradera en la lucha contra el cambio climático. I'm really honored to be here today with this fantastic panel and to be able to have a role in conducting the conversation between the outstanding leaders in the area of climate change and environment. I am very pleased also to be here in Jalisco and to do this as one of the first official activities of my new capacity as Executive Secretary for the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Well, we are really at a very important moment in history. We are actually in a moment where we have the opportunity and the possibility to take actions in order to stand up to the challenge of combating climate change, of controlling the rise in temperature in the environment, and which is threatening the lives of people, which is costing lives of people, which is costing also enormous challenges for infrastructure, especially in developing countries. So it's very important that actions at the local level, I could say in the real world, that actions in the real world happen. But actions cannot happen without leadership and without direction and without the necessary frameworks that are required for all actors involved to be part of the solutions. So I believe also that while we address the issue of climate change, we have to bear in mind that we are taking actions for the well-being of people. And in this regard, it intertwines in a very deep manner with the Agenda for Development, the Agenda 2030, which is an agenda that is relevant and valid and to which every country has committed, not only developing countries, also developed countries. So I would like to hear from all of you today some views on these very, very exciting issues. Es para mí un privilegio entonces poder iniciar este panel y me gustaría preguntarle a la primera ministra Wayne, como anfitriona de la primera cumbre y una participante activa durante la conferencia de París, la COP21, ¿qué considera usted que son los avances más relevantes en lo que va de este año en materia de lucha contra el cambio climático a nivel de gobiernos regionales?
So I didn't hear quite the end of your question because we were still late with the translation. But what are the advances since COP21 and what is the impact? Well, first of all, congratulations, Patricia, on your position. You are so well thought of, and we all look forward to working with you in the years to come. And thank you to all of you. It's a real pleasure to be here. And Governor Sandoval, thank you for welcoming us. It's wonderful to see you again, Governor Shumlin. I want to begin by saying that I think that COP21 was a moment when in many, many countries and in many, many provinces and states around the world, there was a shift from a debate about whether climate change was something we had to tackle into how we will tackle it. And I will say that from my experience as the Premier of Ontario, which is the largest province in Canada. We had been working for some time. We had already shut down all of our coal-fired plants, which meant that we had taken 25% of our greenhouse gas emissions out of the atmosphere, the equivalent of 7 million cars off the road. So we had already taken many steps to address climate change. We were already in the process of beginning to set up a cap-and-trade system, which we will have our first auction in March 2017. So as a subnational government, we were already well down the road and had made decisions. We did not have a national government at that point that was working with us, and that was the case for other subnationals as well. But what happened at COP21, I think the importance of the work that was being done at the province, state, and municipal level became very clear, because it was very clear that the actions, the implementation of real policies that was happening at that subnational level. And it was interesting to me that the tone at COP21 was as optimistic as it was. So what I heard was national leaders picking up the energy and the enthusiasm from what they saw happening in their countries. Some who were leading the charge, making their commentaries at the beginning of the conference, and the whole discussion then became about how we were going to move forward. And I think that created a very important moment. So I feel that there is momentum. I think there are 40 countries and 20 subnational jurisdictions now that have or will have carbon pricing. Now, that's not the whole world, but it's an important step forward. I think what we are seeing in the meeting today already, we are seeing more memoranda of understanding that are being signed, and we're seeing more collaboration happening. So I would say that is, from my perspective, an important legacy of COP21.
Thank you, Premier. I could not agree more with you. As you know or may know, I went into this process of climate change in the framework of the COP16 in 2010. And the scenario and the atmosphere we had at that time was completely the opposite. There was a lack of trust. There was a lack of enthusiasm. It was really, for that reason, COP16 in Cancun in Mexico was a COP that kind of recovered the basis for the intergovernmental process. So I could not agree with you more. Fortunately, we are now in a situation where we can see that there is this broad consensus about the need to act and to act together. The challenge now is how to do it and how are we going to take the relevant decisions in order to make progress in this agenda. And in this framework, Governor Shumlin, I would like to praise your efforts and your leadership in your state in order to put in place policies that address climate issues. And of course, one of the challenges that any authority, any government has when it intends to implement policies that will imply significant changes in the way things have had worked up until now is the resistance it can face and the arguments that can be put in place in order to counter those intentions. In this regard, one of the most common arguments is that if either you intend to fight climate change or you have to make your economy grow. And this implies the risk always of losing jobs, of having heavier costs, and companies losing competitiveness. I would like to invite you to share with us your experience in the state of Vermont as how has this process happened in your wonderful state.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary, and congratulations. I joined Premier Wynne in having great confidence in the job that you're going to do. And I'm honored to be here. Premier Wynne hosted the first Summit of the Americas. I was there with Al Gore and others. It was an extraordinary meeting. And I want to thank Governor Sandoval and for being such an extraordinary leader here. We had an opportunity to meet yesterday, and I'm proud of the work he's doing. It's going to be a great legacy. His legacy will be that he did more to protect the future interests of this government and this region than anyone in a long, long time. So I'm honored to be here with all of you. To answer your question, maybe I should, I also want to thank all the folks here that are working in the grassroots, of the fellow governors, mayors that have to make the tough decisions that are actually going to implement the policies that came out of Paris and give some hope to the survivability of all beings on this earth. I want to answer the question very specifically, and it's not just a question for North America, but I think it's a question for all of us. As we recognize that our biggest challenge as elected leaders, as grassroots workers, as NGOs, is to move as quickly as we can to get off coal and oil and move to other ways of powering the planet, we have to recognize that often our people don't see that as the highest priority. They're worried about how they pay their bills, how they hopefully send their kids to college, how they get by. And I had the privilege of sitting at a dinner right after President Obama was reelected for his second term. And I was sitting next to him and I said, Mr. President, I just want to thank you for being the first president in the history of America to stand up in your inaugural address and talk about climate change. And he looked at me and he said, shaking his head, you know, Peter, they poll every single word I say in those speeches. And you should know that when it came to climate change, it was a flat line. The American people, it just doesn't move them. He said, it moves me, because I'm fighting for my daughters. And I'm going to do everything I can with a Congress that doesn't believe in climate change to do all that I can. But you all, as governors, mayors, local leaders, have to move very, very quickly in light of the denial in Washington. To answer the question specifically, when I had the privilege of becoming governor of Vermont almost 6 years ago, I ran on this as a platform. I said, listen, I kind of think the survival of the human race is a big deal. I also think the survival of all the other living things is a big deal. So if you elect me, we're going to be 90% renewable by 2050. We're going to build out wind and solar. We're going to do energy efficiency right. We're going to get off of coal and oil and move to renewables. And in the process, we'll create jobs and put money in Vermonters' pockets. And my opponent said, oh, no way, the lights are going to go out, the rates are going to go through the roof, he's going to kill jobs because power rates will be so high we won't be able to compete in manufacturing, and the end of the Vermont will come economically. And I'm just pleased to tell you that 5.5 years later, we've delivered on the promise. It wasn't easy, and it's no easier for me than it is for all the other governors and mayors and folks that are working so hard here. I've had plenty of critics, protesters. Some say we're moving too fast, but we now have 11 times the number of solar panels we had when I became governor, 11 times. We have 22 times the number of wind generation. We've changed the model for our utilities so that instead of being companies that find transmission out there somewhere and bring it in poles and wires and sell as much of it as they can to customers, the biggest utility in Vermont, 80% of Vermonters use it, their CEO's business model now is to come into your aging home with the on-bill financing that we've passed for the same money that, don't forget, we have a very cold climate in Vermont, old houses. It's an old state. Beautiful state, by the way. You should all come. But for the same money that they were heating their homes with oil and paying their electric bill, now the utility will come in and say, listen, for what you're paying right now, we will rip out your old doors and windows and replace them with efficient doors and windows. We'll blow your house so tight with cellulose that you'll be opening your windows in the wintertime to get fresh air. We're going to take the oil burner out of the basement and replace it with a cold weather heat pump, which is new technology that's only been available to us in the last 3 or 4 years. We're going to put solar on your roof or in your yard. Local community will buy what you don't use at my net metering rate that's very, very good that we passed. And the result will be that you won't use oil, you won't use coal, and you will be able to be entirely green using much less energy for the same price that you were paying for oil and electricity before. So that's the utilities model. Well, what does it mean? It's meant that we put money in Vermonters' pockets. We're the only state in the Northeast, in New England, where electric rates for 4 of the last 5 years either went down or were flat, while our neighbors' electric rates went up. Second, we've created jobs. We've created jobs. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in North America, 3.2%, 3.3%. If you were in a room with 17 Vermonters right now, one of them has a job in the green, clean, energy, renewable sector. 1 in 17 jobs. And most importantly, we have moved to an almost 100% electric, green, renewable grid. And that's a big deal. So it creates jobs, it puts money in Vermonters' pockets by lowering rates, and it helps create a better economy. So going back to that initial conversation with President Obama, it doesn't matter if you're the President of the United States who's fighting this battle with one arm tied behind his back because of the Republican Congress, or if you're a governor or a mayor or a volunteer for an NGO, if we can simply point out that climate change is good for your pocketbook, good for job creation, good for the economy, we will get many more friends to help us accelerate this battle that's so critical. Thanks.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you for your very important and strong leadership in this area that requires the willingness to speak up when many are making criticism, and which shows how much you really care about the agenda that will bring our future generations a better life, a better livelihood. Señor Gobernador Aristóteles Sandoval, usted nos está recibiendo el día de hoy en esta segunda cumbre de las Américas sobre cambio climático. Ese hecho en sí ya nos demuestra su voluntad, su compromiso político con esta agenda, con la necesidad de luchar contra el cambio climático. Para un estado de un país en desarrollo como México, eso por supuesto también plantea retos muy particulares. A mí me gustaría preguntarle cuáles han sido para usted los principales retos a superar para poder poner en marcha en este bellísimo estado de la República Mexicana un programa muy sólido, muy robusto en esta materia, y también cuáles son sus expectativas de esta segunda cumbre de las Américas.
Bueno, primero agradecer y darles la más cordial bienvenida a Patricia. Muchas gracias por todo el apoyo que nos das. Por supuesto, reconocer el liderazgo de Ontario con la primer ministro Wayne Shumlin. También muchas gracias al señor gobernador de Vermont, con quien nos hemos acercado para aprender, interactuar, intercambiar ideas, programas que nos permitan avanzar más rápido. Por supuesto, en los países en desarrollo tenemos grandes retos, como es la concientización. Tenemos una gran desigualdad, un atraso tecnológico, el cual estamos hoy impulsando. Y todos estos nos llevaron a Jalisco a poder involucrarnos en agendas mundiales, agendas internacionales, con las cuales